Hello and welcome to this episode of Sexier Than a Squirrel, the podcast that teaches you how to beat that squirrel, how to become more attractive to your dog than anything else in the environment.
Now, we know as much as you know that actually training through games, it is absolutely the way forward. So today we are going to be talking to you about...
We are going to be talking about what to do with this whole lockdown situation that, many countries are dealing with at the moment. These are strange times, they're uncertain times, and for sure it's a time where actually our normal lifestyle with our dog might not quite be possible. So effectively what we're going to do for this episode is we're going to think about what is like a survival guide so that one, your dog finds it a rewarding experience, and two, that you survive your dog in this time.
And for us, we want you to find this a positive, rewarding experience as much as possible, because actually a lot of these things are out of our control, and what we want to do most of all is make the very best of a situation that we effectively are in, right?
Absolutely. So before we dive into that, a few things that you need to do. First of all, if you have not subscribed to the podcast, you need to subscribe, whether that's on iTunes, whether that's on Spotify, whatever podcast app or service that you use, make sure you subscribe. Second thing that we'd love you to do is leave us a review over on iTunes or whatever podcast service you use, because the thing with reviews is that like times like this podcast is going to be useful for people, whether that's giving dog training strategies or actually just something positive to focus on that isn't maybe the problems of the world. And the more reviews you leave and the clearer we make that for people, the more people are going to find it.
And the thing is, we want to share great stuff, positivity, energy, optimism. In a time like this, actually, feel free to share us with friends. And like Tom said, the reviews are really important because actually we want to share good stuff, right? Yeah. It's important. We're going to keep everybody in a good space.
Absolutely. So, obviously, many countries are in lockdown at the moment or might go into lockdown, and there are various kind of country-specific restrictions that we're seeing, and this has led to us being inundated with questions relating to how we manage dogs in this situation.
Or how we might survive this situation, because actually for many people they're worried about just how they're going to get through it, like survival.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we thought we'd do is we thought we would jump on and film a podcast whereby we talk about some of the things that we're considering and really help you out through this. So I guess the most common question that we've been absolutely inundated with is, I've got a young dog and they're a puppy, and I'm being told that I can't really leave the house except to, walk them maybe once a day.
How am I going to socialize them? And just to quickly clarify with you guys, we're not quite in that situation yet here, but at the same time, we know that these things are changing, right? Like these things are changing and we can kind of see it coming. So we want to chat to you before this becomes, a problem actually. Yeah. So we had that question only this morning, didn't we, Tom? We were working away, and the first thing one of the owners said to us that she was, it was a phone call, and she said she was really stressing because her puppy, number one, she was petrified that they weren't going to get the correct routine vaccination style protocol, and number two, her biggest worry was actually the socialization impact that could have on her 8-9-week-old border collie, I think it was.
Yeah. And what we see this is almost as an opportunity, and that is that socialization, we'll do it like a separate podcast episode on that because it's huge. Big topic. But actually, to summarize our take on socialization, the absence of a bad experience far outweighs 100 good experiences. So what that means is that actually socialization shouldn't be so much an active process where we're pushing our dogs out into the world, but instead it should almost be a protective process.
And actually we've had years and years and years, haven't we, Tom, where actively people push socialization. You have the tick sheet and you go through it all, and we actively have been the other way, whereas just like Tom said, we're very much of the mindset that actually let's not have the bad experiences, because actually you can have so many positives, but every bad one is really going in that bank, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if anything, the fact that you're you're limiting your dog's exposure to the world. This actually could be a positive thing for them versus, exposing them, and then them having a bad experience.
One thing that we definitely know is there's a hell of a lot you can do without actually exposing them and without actually going out, whether your country's in lockdown or not. Actually, there's a lot you can do, and whether this is a puppy generally or not, whether this was a general puppy question, there's a lot you can do without being outside, right, Tom?
Absolutely. And the cool thing is with this, and it's kind of nice in a way, because what we talk about and teach on a daily basis across the world, where people are kind of being forced to do now, which is that we believe that you can play games at home. You can effectively homeschool your dog, which a lot of kind of two-legged and four-legged friends are being homeschooled at the moment.
Oh, the joy.
And we can do that, and we can actively play games, interact with our dogs and reshape their brain so that when they go out into the outside world, they're adequately prepared. So it's less about socialization should be less about exposing them to specific things like a checklist, and it instead should be inspiring these concepts of optimism, confidence, and just general kind of robustness that we can train at home, in our living room, in our kitchen, through games, so that they are then adequately prepared for the world.
And it's about that. It's about preparation, right? Like, we feel we've been preparing for so much of this for so long, like mindset and resourcefulness and having a good sort of a good space to be in. And actually, this is exactly what we're looking for with our dogs. Homeschooling, games at home, loads they can be doing for confidence, loads they can be doing for optimism. And that's really the goal, right? Like, we want optimistic, confident dogs who haven't had bad exposure.
Yeah.
You know what? It's not as bad as you might think. And the other thing is controlling the controllable. Actually, we can't control it anyway. Yeah. So let's not add more stress to it, because that's not good for anyone.
And the key to feeling, optimistic and positive in these times is the fact is that, there's a lot that's uncontrollable in the world, as Lauren says. If our focus goes on what is controllable, if our focus goes on what makes us feel great, we'll actually feel better. So to put it to go into like the doggy neuroscience with this, really all socialization should be is actually teaching a dog that novelty, that new things happening in the environment are something to be, something to think, they're a non-event. They're not something to be scared of. They're not something to be worried about. Now, think about it. Novelty doesn't just happen outside. It happens in the house as well. So
let me give you an example. This morning we were cooking breakfast and we dropped a saucepan. And actually that was a pretty novel experience for a young dog. And some young dogs would certainly be taken back by that.
Yeah. And so that was an opportunity where novelty happened. We didn't plan to drop the saucepan. And in fact, our dogs got some of their daily food allowance.
And yet for us, actually, Tom, we do often plan these scenarios, right? So we've got maybe, I don't know, some noisy bottles, or maybe we've got some balls in a ball pool, and we'll actually create these scenarios, but in a very safe, low-key space.
Yeah. And where our dogs are actively taking control of the situation. And, like, let's say you get a box from your recycling, put some noisy items in there, and then just see if your dog wants to investigate and interact, and maybe scatter some food in there. See if they want to explore it. You're teaching them that interacting with novelty is something cool. And then imagine that they go for a walk in, I don't know, a month's time, whatever it might be, who knows. And they meet someone, and they meet someone on the walk that maybe looks a little bit different to what their idea of a normal person is, and instead it's just another piece of novelty, and they're used to it. And most restrictions at the moment, and we can't talk for every country,
and every country's different,
and we can't talk about where it might go, but we can walk our dogs. We just have to do that in a very kind of restricted and sensible manner, where we're staying away from other people, and also we're not doing it in excess, so that we're maintaining social distancing. So we have opportunity on those walks not to actively seek out novelty. Like, I can see what a lot of puppy owners might want to do at the moment, that they're going to use their one walk a day to try and almost expose and flood their dog with everything, thinking they've got to pack a lot into a small time.
Let's be honest, some people who maybe haven't been exercising in the past suddenly have taken up the idea of exercising. So actually, we do need to be a little bit mindful. Government said exercise, actually suddenly things have changed. So what I would say to all of you is actually don't get too het up on the walk must be used for socialising. And some of your countries, you may not be experiencing any walks right now at all. Don't panic, I think, is the biggest thing we're saying. I mean, that's the sort of thing that we're seeing in the challenge right now, that people are absolutely enjoying games in their home. They're enjoying homeschooling. And I think there's huge purpose and huge value in doing that. Yeah.
And Lauren's just mentioned the challenge.
I forgot. I was chatting about the challenge. You guys might not know about the challenge.
So we may as well talk about that. So what we realised is that this is a time when people need something to focus on. They need something positive to kind of focus their attention
something
on.
Optimistic, energy, accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And a way that is tried and tested of homeschooling their dogs. So what we did is we put together the 25-day Worldwide Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge.
I bet, in fact, some of the people listening, I bet you might even be on it.
Yeah. Because the reason why I bet a lot of you are on it is because over 6,000 people have actually jumped into this challenge. And what we're doing is collectively as a group, we're saying, right, let's keep each other optimistic. Let's keep each other positive.
Let's keep each other in a good space. Let's play games with our dogs. Let's send videos and let's enjoy them. And actually,
let's become sexier than the squirrel.
Let's do it every day together. This is something we're going to do every day together. So we've got an opportunity to get involved in that in a community. And it's a positive, optimistic project, and you're training your dog at the same time, and you stop worrying about what you can't do and you start focusing on what you can. And we've got this, we always have the mantra, I don't really know where it came from, but it was the whole where focus goes, energy flows, and we flow energy into a great sort of space, a space where actually we're having fun, we're playing games. And there's so much evidence that those who sort of play together stay together, and it stays like a nice, it's a nice positive effect in the long run.
And the thing is that we could, in this time, we could immerse ourselves in like a soup of problems, but actually if we immerse ourselves in like a cool accountability optimism challenge where for the next 25 days you get a new game each day in the form of a video, how cool would that be to actually homeschool your dog and get great results, whether they're a puppy or an older dog, but also actually make yourself feel great as well. So the Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge, it's happening right now. You can jump in. The cool thing is that you jump in, you can get caught up really easily. The way that you can jump in and find out more on that is if you go to absolutedogs.me/sexy, then you will be able to jump in. And
that's
right now,
SEXY/.
Sexy. Yeah.
And the thing is, like Tom said, right now that's available. It's not something we've ever done before. And it's because of exactly this. Homeschooling is absolutely right now needed for us, for my mindset, for my dog's training, and to keep us in a good place. And it's a community there. You get a video every single day, loads of optimistic sort of boosts within the group, like little tips and little tricks, videos, and we'll also try and be live in there where we can. So it's a great opportunity.
You can become sexier than the squirrel. Who wouldn't want that?
Who doesn't want to be more sexy? Like, come on.
On that note, we've had a couple of game changer wins, and we've got to do a couple today because there are a couple of big ones. Caroline says, and this is actually in the Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge Facebook group, so Caroline's going through the challenge
my God, I've just
with
read
her
it.
dog. Jack Russell Terrier, 8-month-old pup. She says she's got to share it because she was sexier than a sheep. Sexier than a sheep. Way to go, Caroline.
That's damn sexy.
And then Wendy says, again, in the Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge Facebook group, she's in the challenge as well. She says, hey guys, I was just sexier than the squirrel that was driving my dogs crazy outside my office window. I love it. And she says, and do you know how I did it? I actually played the game from day 2 of the challenge, and they picked me over the squirrel.
Now, you don't need to worry if you haven't maybe jumped in on it straight away. All of the games are going to be there for you. And we just love everybody to be in there having a great time, really. It's a great opportunity. Dive in on the games. So, I suppose that comes, for me, full circle in that we don't need to be going out with our dogs if actually the situation says right now it's not good to. We've got to be looking after ourselves, and we've got to be staying safe.
And even like on the a higher level than that, not only do we not have to? Actually, it could be massively beneficial to homeschool our dogs. This is like almost a gift in the sense of our relationship with our dogs.
And it's hugely empowering for an owner. And I know, we run a huge dog training centre here. And at some points I will say to a student, right now the dog training centre isn't right for you. You probably need a few weeks just to really do a little bit of homeschooling. So that's not unusual for us to say that. And a lot of dog classes and dog clubs and dog centres, sometimes there are dog incidents. And just like you said, Tom, you can have 100 good experiences and then you can have one bad one. Yeah. So actually, in some ways, maybe the challenge is going to give you a good opportunity to have mainly good experiences. Yeah,
for sure. And like, speaking of opportunities, like how many of you have ever started something like, I don't know, like painting or gardening or something, and then you got sidetracked and then it got put on the back burner and you never got to it. We see this time and time again where people's dog owning dreams actually get put on the back burner because life takes over and they get pulled in different directions. And so this is a great time for us to refocus, a great time for us to take that dream off the back burner and kind of put it in full focus, and we can see it as a cool opportunity.
I think the other thing to know is that I've got some of you guys might know, I have world level agility dogs. So actually my main focus is agility dogs. I can do this with an agility dog, who is my family pet as well. At the same time, I could do this with a puppy, or I could do this with a rehome dog, or I could actually do it. I mean, we were on the moors this morning with our almost 13-year-old dog, and he was having a great time and he could do it, right? Like we could do it with any of the dogs that we might come into contact with, whether you're a trainer or whether you're a dog enthusiast or whether you just love a puppy. Like, you know what? It works for everybody, right?
So on that note, the next question that we've been getting inundated with is that up until recently, you had a routine with your dog, and you know, if you've been following us a little while, how we feel about routines, and that's again a story for another podcast. But you've realised that your dog's kind of struggling with now this lack of routine. So what do you do to help them out through this process? And so we thought we'd kind of share with you some tips that are going to help you survive and also help them transition to a better way of life.
So first off, I do have to sometimes question myself a little bit, because our dogs are definitely, we ditch the routine generally. So we very rarely will have any level of like strict routine. At the same time, often the routine is often for me more so than my dogs. And actually my dogs become quite flexible, the more flexible I become. So number one for me with getting rid of a routine would be actually ditching the bowl. Because when I ditch the bowl, I've got so many resources to go to. So when I say ditch the bowl, what I mean is, instead of giving your dog in a food bowl on a daily basis, whether you feed raw, whether you feed kibble, this is something we talk about in the Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge. Actually, we've got a free ebook within the challenge, haven't we, on ditch the bowl raw. So it doesn't matter what you feed, but because I utilize it in a way that it allows me to have no routine. So for example, in the morning, some mornings I might go straight out for a walk, and other mornings I might scatter their food in the garden, and other mornings I might let them go for a wee on the lead, to go for their little toilet break, and then I might come in and play a game. So it really does depend on, I normally do something with them, but it is very rarely the same thing. And by ditching the bowl, it kind of insists that I do that, because the bowl, they're going to get their food in some way at some point in the day. So I would say number one, key thing for me with getting rid of a routine and adjusting to a different routine, or ideally we'd suggest no routine, is ditch the bowl.
Next thing that we would say that we do is that, you know, if you find that a routine has been established, the way to get away from that routine is, let's say, for example, your walks have been at 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. Here's what we do. And this is, you're going to have to do this now because you've been forced to ditch the routine potentially. 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. we would do an activity, but it would not be a walk.
So let's maybe replace it with games, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're doing is you're just swapping out activities. Now, effectively, all we're doing with any activity is we're providing enrichment for our dogs. But here's what's really important. We have a bit of a mantra that we say within the Training Academy, which is like our online community. And that is that enrichment does not have to equal high arousal. So what we mean by that is we often think that in order to enrich our dogs' lives or exercise our dogs, that it has to be exciting. Actually, what a lot of dogs need is calm enrichment or calming enrichment. And in fact, if we can take that loose routine that you've got and your dogs become dependent on, and we can see this as an opportunity now that we can no longer follow it and start swapping out some of those exciting things for calmer things, we'll probably see just generally across the board that our dog's behaviour will get better.
So let's say a calming activity that I might swap for me, it would be scatter feeding. Now, if you've got a garden, that's excellent because you've got great spots for it. If you haven't got a garden, actually, when we were, Matt and I were away a couple of weeks ago, I will scatter them in a kitchen or a living room or somewhere like that. And if I'm raw feed, I'm obviously not going to scatter that because that's not so pretty. However, and And I normally scatter before I'm going to do any cleaning. So if we're going to clean at all, we would scatter first and then we would hoover. But
so
if you're...
once every 6 months.
Every 6 months plus, maybe every 9. And then, but if I was raw feeding, it would be maybe a stuffed bone, or maybe we would Tom and I both use, we've got a love of green tripe.
Yeah.
Green tripe love. And we will put our supplements in there as well. So all our supplements can go in with that.
Yeah.
But when we're doing something like that, it would be frozen. So that would be another enrichment but calming activity. So it's calming at the same time.
Yeah.
So for me, owning multi-dogs, and I know that, for example, Classic's really high energy and she likes to come out and scream, straight on to scattering really minimises the high arousal. So I agree. I would say personally lower arousal.
Yeah. So that is our kind of advice on the routine. Now, the next thing that we've been asked a lot is, oh my word, I'm not going to be able to exercise my dog.
Oh my God, if I can't exercise,
I
one of us is going to, I don't know, drop down dead. And for us, actually, we need to think about, you know what, we can do this.
Yeah.
Like, we absolutely can do this. We can adapt, we can change, we're resourceful, we're flexible.
Absolutely. And in fact, exercise, what you've got to think is, what purpose was exercise serving to your dog? Because one thing's for sure, that the more you exercise your dog, the better their behaviour becomes? No.
Not at all. And
Quite
so
the opposite often.
We also need to think about, like Tom said, the purpose of exercise, but also dynamic things that we can do that replaces that.
Yeah.
So for me, you'd be really surprised. Again, top end agility dogs, I play Triple F a lot, which is our fitness program.
Yeah.
Or I do the Sexier than a Squirrel challenge games.
Yeah.
I do them all in my living room.
Yeah.
There's not one game that couldn't be played in my living room. And my living room is not a big space, right, Tom? In fact, it's my kitchen living room. It's not even, it's a smaller space. Then for me, things like scatter feeding, they all replace the walk experience, and they actually replace it in a more productive and more, I suppose, laser targeted way.
Yeah, and in fact, the reason why we put the 25-day Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge together the way we did is because we were thinking, right, what can we do? What game could we do each day for 25 days that would firstly get people real life results? Secondly, invest in the relationship bank account. Thirdly, provide that dog with enrichment that is going to benefit their behavior and the way that they're dealing with this experience. And fourthly, actually, the games incorporate levels of exercise as well.
All of our dogs pant at the end of them, right?
Exactly.
They're panting.
They have fun. They pant. They have their exercise. And so the 25-day Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge, coupled with some additional Triple F games and exercises that can literally be done in your living room and kitchen. And actually, not only is the exercise component taken care of, but probably this is more productive exercise than we normally do.
And what I'd absolutely say, what I've seen anyway from doing all of this, is that our dogs are pretty contented. They don't expect any walk at any time.
Yeah. They're super fit.
They're very, very fit dogs. They're high energy dogs, and yet they're very calm around the house generally. And I would say this may be a really good opportunity and a turning point for you to realise how adaptable, how resourceful, how flexible you are. And actually, it's something we'll talk on at some point with you guys, is reshaping the walk, and how you can reshape the walk in the long run, because your dog doesn't need a walk every day or twice a day. It's just us that needs a bit of flexible adaptation.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to tell you this story just quickly, because sometimes like things happen and they seem like a problem, and actually they're a little bit of a gift. I had a behavior consult a couple of weeks ago where let's say it was a very, very high energy dog that struggled with calmness, and the way that they would cope with this like overflowing bucket that they had each day is they would actually chase light, they would air snap for flies, they developed an abnormal repetitive behavior. Now, that dog's bucket was very full. One of the things that had been filling that dog's bucket up until recently was 3 walks a day. You know, that dog was getting walked about 2 to 3 hours a day when it was all added up. Now, that dog actually cut their pad. They stood on something and there was a cut on there. And the vet had said, you must rest your dog for 3 weeks. And the nice thing is that I normally I'm trying to convince people that actually we need to actually cut back on the walks here. The rest was forced, and the owner was like, I don't understand it. The weird thing is, since I've stopped walking him, he's so much better. I'm like, oh my God, I get to skip the whole convincing here. She's already converted.
She's on board. She's on board.
So sometimes, things seem like a problem. Actually, they're an opportunity. Really what we see, the 3 common questions that we've been asked over the past week or two has been socialization. What do we do here? This whole issue with routine and dogs that are dependent on routine, and also, then what we're going to do about exercise. And actually, all of these things, they're potentially gifts. The fact that we're having to change our approach here.
The only thing I would add to that and suggest for all of you guys is sometimes it's about filling yourself up.
Yeah.
So actually, I know for me that a walk is it's a lovely opportunity, especially where we live. Tom and I live in the heart of Devon. It's absolutely beautiful, and when we're out, it really makes us sort of take a breath and be present in the moment and enjoy where we are. So if there's something that you're missing, then obviously if it's local to you and you can get there and it's okay with your government sort of system as to where you are, then do it sensibly. At the same time, if it's not possible for any reason right now, find strategies that fill you up. So for me, I know it might sound crazy, but listening to waves or looking at a picture of somewhere or taking myself there for a moment and taking myself into a good headspace, chatting to a friend, making sure we listen to a good podcast so you guys can suggest the podcast to anyone that you think it might boost. I would suggest to all of you that it's something to work out what fills you up, because often our walk is part of what fills us up in a good way. And when I say fills us up, I mean filling the tank. So looking after the tank.
Absolutely. And in fact, the funny thing is, and I don't know why this actually surprises loads of people when we say it, we're working through the 25-day Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge with our dogs.
Absolutely.
Because we know that that's like a time that we have loads of fun, it fills us up, it gives us something positive to focus on.
It gives us accountability and something to get up each day knowing that we're going to look forward to.
And everyone doing it together.
And Tom and I have made a bit of a commitment to try whatever we can to get on the group live. So we'll be on the group live as well. So it's a great opportunity at the moment while this is going on. I think it's a great opportunity for us all to stick together, to stay tight, to lean in together, and actually to create something really beautiful.
Yeah. So on that note, guys, if you have not jumped into the Sexier Than a Squirrel worldwide 25-day challenge, the way that you do that is by going to absolutedogs.me/sexy. That's SEXY. We will see you in the challenge, those of you who are jumping in. That was this episode of Sexier Than a Squirrel. And remember, stay sexy. Hey, before you go, have you taken part in the Worldwide Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge?
It's a 25-day online video program, huge energy, amazing community, and over 6,000 people are already taking part.
The only question is, you know where you are today, where do you want to be 25 days from now? Head to absolutedogs.me/sexy.